Hello and welcome to Who is Best, a show where I, Claudine, take games that give you choices and rate those choices in a tier list. And today we will be examining one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. I am talking about the one and only Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Okay, so this game just came out on the Switch with a ton of new content as well as improved graphics. I played the original on the Wii as well as the port to the 3DS. I love this game, as does hundreds of thousands of other players all around the world. Today we will be examining each playable character with their skills, arts, talent art, and stats in order to place them in a tier list. I'm going to attack this tier list considering each character as a playable one and an AI one. This game is notorious for poor AI, so that could bump characters up or down on the list. Now, there is one massive spoiler in this video. In fact, it's really hard to compile a list like this without spoiling anything. With that being said, I'll be sure to throw up a big spoiler flag before that happens. I'd also like to preference this one as one of the hardest lists I've ever put together. Research showed me that there's no real common consensus on who are the best characters. I'm going to take my own experience mixed with that research to hopefully produce a tier list that the fan base, including myself, can be proud of. Now, with that heavy responsibility, let's start with the tier. Melia is one of the most hated characters in the game. She is also one of the worst party members, completely irredeemable in both story and gameplay, and... Okay, let's get started for real. Fiora is a temporary party member that you get for the first area of the game. She is about as basic as you get with some decent arts, but nothing that surpasses any of the others. Don't waste much time building her up as she will leave the party early on. The low tier. Charla is not liked by the community. I don't exactly know why. I like Charlotte. I think she has a great design and has a small but significant place in the overall story. I especially like the idea behind her, though in practice a full healer in this game is pretty much useless towards mid and end game. There are just easier ways to heal that don't involve taking an entire party slot. With that being said, I don't think she's an absolute waste. She can be built to serve more than just a healer role. The problem is that everyone is usually better in every other way. Her rifles, armor, and accent may be cool, but after the opening hours of the game, she'll probably just take a backseat in your team.
Hold on! I'm coming!
Wait! Shut up!
Juju!
The mid-tier. Remember when I said this was a hard list? Well, the mid-tier represents the struggles of putting a tier list together. These two characters can place higher on this list. I just want to say that. But because their usefulness is rounded, I've decided to place them here. And to start,
Ryan time!
Ryan is your basic tank with many useful abilities. He can lay out heavy damage and is honestly, from what I've read, pretty underrated. But when compared to your other tank options, he falls slightly short. The one big thing Ryan has going for him is that his AI is fairly good at being a tank. But in the end, although Ryan's ability to attack multiple enemies and his insanely high damage count is
awesome,
the absolute broken status of the next batch of characters just can't be compared. I'd recommend him for any casual playthrough of the game. Now, this next character is going to be the most controversial. I struggled putting him on the high tier, but ended up keeping him in the mid tier. The next character is Ricky. Yes, Ricky. Ricky is your jack of all trades. He can be a tank, healer, DPS, support, really whatever you would like. Although just a jack of all trades, he really does excel at almost everything. So why is he on the mid tier? Well, it's mostly because the next four characters each have the ability to break the game in their own way. And Ricky simply plays by the rules. But that doesn't make him a bad character. In fact, he is one of the better characters. See what I'm talking about? Maybe he should have been top tier. I don't even know. But he's top of the mid tier. We'll just say that. Moving on. The top tier. First on the top tier is Dunban. Dunban's advantage in this game is that he is built to abuse the agility stat of Xenoblade Chronicles. Agility counts towards your evasion and accuracy. Because of this, he is the best tank in the game. Build him out as an agility tank and nothing will touch him. His AI can be troublesome, so controlling him directly will get you the best result, but even as an AI character, Dunban destroys. Next on the top tier is a major spoiler. If you haven't played this game yet, skip forward to the time on the screen. The next character in the top tier is Fiora, referred to by the community as Seven. When Fiora returns to the party, she is no longer fully Homs. Instead, she is a Homs Mechon hybrid. She is also your highest damage dealer in the game. I mean, seriously, her different talent arts completely decimate enemies. You get her late in the game, so she takes a lot of work to get her up to par, but it is definitely worth it. Also, her armor designs are amazing. Seriously, she's so cool. If all that wasn't enough, Fiora's AI is probably the best in the game, so she's definitely a character you can leave on her own to do her own damage. Also, one final gush, but her coming back is one of my favorite gaming moments of all time. Melia's got nothing on Fiora.
Fiora, you're awake. Do you remember? My name is
I can't believe it. My first kiss.
Fight me. The God tier. First on the God tier is Shulk. Shulk goes from being a mid-tier player through the first 3/4 of the game to being one of the best characters available. Monado arts, mixed with some insane upgrades to his character, just break the game completely. His biggest downfall is that his AI is completely ridiculous. Shulk is a character you have to control directly in order to get the most out of him. A side note, if you do use him, Shulk pretty much makes tanks useless because of all the damage he puts out. But if you can keep aggro off this guy, then
I'll kill you!
The final member of the God tier is, no surprise, Melia. Melia is broken. There isn't really a debate over this.
Now, one caveat is that you have to control her directly in order for her to break the game. But employing the topple lock strategy with her will guarantee a win in any fight. Her summons can hand out unbelievable damage.
And yeah, take mine and the community as a whole's word for it. She's the best.
Darin! Damil!
Today we will be looking at the sequel to one of the greatest JRPGs of all time, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. In this game, there are over 50 different weapons/characters you can collect called blades. You do this by releasing them from core crystals or collecting them through the story. Each blade falls into 3 classes: tank, DPS, and healer. We'll be ranking these blades according to their passive and active skills, classes, damage output, assigned element, weapon type, attack animation, and well, about a million other things. This is not a simple list, and I have broken it into 2 parts. I will just be scratching the surface, but if you want an extensive, and I mean extensive, look at the blades, check out Enel's 5-part series on his channel. He is the expert in all things Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and I have made only slight changes to his tier list. Be sure to watch part 2, where I will reveal the optimal party and blade setup. Now, without further ado, I give you the tier. Number 51 is Finch. Finch is horrible at pulling aggro and uses a shield hammer, which is one of the worst weapon types in the game. Number 50 is Electra, who's annoying and also horrible at pulling aggro and uses a shield hammer. The only thing she has for her is a high block rate, but in a game where evasion tanks are most important, walls just aren't that great. Number 49 is Godfrey, who is horrible at pulling aggro, but also has 2 aux cords, which is fairly okay. Number 48 is Dromark. He's a healer, but that's about it. And in a game where the end game doesn't really use the healer classes, he's one of the worst. Number 47, Korra. Knuckle Class is a good weapon, but she lacks any skills and abilities that would make her really that useful. And that's it for the crap tier. Let's move on to the low tier. Number 46, Florin. Florin uses Florin uses bitballs. Florin uses bitballs, which are slightly better than shield hammers, but really his only use is healing, and again, that isn't that useful in post-game. Number 45, Vess. Vess is a high DPS bits ball, but that's not that useful. Number 44, Dahlia. Dahlia is slightly better than Florin and Vess, but suffers the same issues. The only thing she has going for her is that she can break elemental orbs better than most, which is a fairly good passive ability. Number 43, Aegeon. Worst katana in the game, but makes a pretty decent evasion tank. Number 42, Ursula. Ursula is very useful during the story, but when it comes to post-game, again, she's just not that great as far as bitballs and healers go. Number 41, Boreas. Again, a bitball and healer, but with all that being said, he is one of the better healers in the game. And last of the low tier is Rock. Rock is a low damage DPS, but he does have the smash ability, which is pretty rare across the blades. Mid tier. First on the mid tier is Cassandra, number 39. Cassandra's a shield hammer, which is a minus, but she has a bunch of useful skills. She can pull aggro pretty well, and she's a rare dark blade type. Number 38, Perdido. The only use Perdido has is as a auto attack DPS, and that's about it. Number 37, Abrona. Abrona does pretty low damage, but she can break enemies, which opens up the gate to a lot of different combos in the game. Number 36, Cressidas. Cressidas is a knuckle clone tank that can draw aggro really well. He isn't anything to write home about, but he is a fairly good tank. Number 35, Perun. If you're planning on having your party die a lot, Perun is a great DPS. With KO'd allies, she can put out a lot of damage. The only problem is, why would you want your allies KO'd? Number 34, Percival. Does well against multiple enemies with AoE attacks, but other than that, doesn't do very well, especially against single enemies. Number 33, Poppy Alpha. Poppy Alpha is the best wall tank in the game, but again, in a game where evasion tanks are broken beyond belief, the walls really hit a wall, no pun intended, and don't get much better. Number 32, Poppy Buster. Poppy Buster is the best shield hammer in the game, which isn't saying much, but she's fairly good. Number 31, and this is a spoiler, so be warned. Number 31 is Nia. Nia is one of the best healers in the game, but again, that's not very useful when it comes to endgame. It is nice that she's water typing, which is somewhat rare, to be honest. But overall, she's probably a blade you would want to use in the story, but not much past that. Number 30, Sheba. Sheba is the weakest cannon in the game, but she's also really good for the main story, because she's pretty easy to max out. But by endgame, there are a lot, and I mean a lot, better cannons out there. Number 29, Theory. Theory is great at drawing aggro and can evade pretty well. Overall, she's one of the middle tanks in the list. And for a new category to the show, we are going to be doing an upper mid tier, just to break this up a bit more. These blades are slightly better than the mid tier list. With that being said, let's start with 28, Praxis. Praxis is just a well-rounded DPS character. She does pretty well in most situations. Number 27, Newt. Newt can be a great tank, but the problem is that she suffers from drawing aggro, which always creates a problem. But man, is her design awesome. 26, Gorg. Gorg is similar to Newt in his usefulness, but again, he's slightly better, but again, just not that great overall. Number 25, Vale. Vale can put out a ton of damage, but the problem is it just takes a long time to get to that point. And there are a lot of better blades that can do the same amount of damage or better faster. Number 24, Agate. Agate has situational strength and can buff the party, so she's fairly good, but not amazing. Number 23, Sever. Sever is just a fast and consistent tank character. If there was a middle point tank, it would be Sever. 22, Azami. Azami is a horrible blade up until New Game Plus, but with the right strategy, she can put out a massive amount of damage in chain attacks. She's also a dark typing, which is good. Number 21, Poppy Cutie. Poppy Cutie is one of the better tanks in the game and has a bunch of customizability. Unfortunately, because of circumstances, she just is outclassed by the other Poppy, which we will talk about later in this list. Number 20, Akos. If you were going to put a title to Akos, it would be DPS Healer. He's a pretty decent party member for any team setup. Number 19, Adenine. Adenine is again one of those situational damage dealers, but she has the plus ability to heal, which can maybe be useful in some situations. Number 18, Nim. Nim is an interesting placement on this list. She's decent alone, but really the main thing you would want her for is buffing your combos. I've seen a lot of endgame teams throw her in just for her single ability to buff. Number 17, Mikhail. Mikhail is one of the best DPS tanks out there and can be a fairly useful character. And the final one on the list for today is Wulfric. Wulfric can do insane damage to topple enemies, but he has some pretty low defense and is outclassed by a lot of blades in the next video. Now, without further ado, let's get started with the high tier. Starting off the high tier is Brigid. Brigid is simply one of the best evasion tanks in the game. She is a evasion goddess. She's also great at pulling aggro, and overall is just a solid character. Number 14, Zenobia. Zenobia has the strongest damage output in the game. She has high critical, is perfect for enemies that are higher leveled. Because of her passive, really she only suffers when doing chain attacks. But with the amount of damage you can put out with her, that's not too bad. Number 13, Herald. Herald is the antithesis of Zenobia. Her real deal is that she can do insane amounts of chain attack damage. She also has a high auto attack damage as well. Number 12, Cressette. Cressette is without doubt the best bitball in the game. She can rake out damage with her arts and damage additives. She is super useful in chain attacks and can heal as well. Number 11, Petroka. Petroka is the better version of Wulfric, one of the best DPSs in the game, and under certain circumstances can max out her damage. Number 10, Dagus. Dagus is a bit of an underappreciated blade. He's the strongest axe DPS and can buff the entire party for ultimate damage across the board. Number 9, Telos. Sorry, did I say that Dagus was the best axe DPS? I meant Telos is the best axe DPS in the game. She can do the highest damage output, along with her rare dark typing, which makes her very useful. She can damage cap with her multiple hit combos and can be highly effective against super bosses. Number 8, Corvin. Corvin is a ridiculously good blade with high damage, high critical, and high recharge. Rivaling Brigid as one of the best evasion tanks in the game, he is a well-rounded character and is pretty much useful in every situation. Number 7 is Shulk, the hero from the original game. Shulk has all the perks of a shield hammer without the fault of its speed. He is one of the best support blades in the game and can up damage, agility, and accuracy across the board. And that wraps up the high tier. Let's finally move on to the God tier. First on the God tier list is Cosmos. Cosmos is one of the rarest and best blades in the game. She is a must-have for any party. She can put out unrealistic amounts of damage and ignores enemy defenses. On top of that, she has the largest AoE attacks in the game and can take out mobs in a heartbeat. Number 5 is the Aegis. There are 3 characters wrapped in one here. The first is Pyra, who is obviously the weakest of them. Really, the only use you're going to have for her is that she has the fire typing and you can switch her in if you need to. Next is Mithra. Mithra alone would probably still hit the god tier. She can put out critical damage at an insane rate as well as evade almost every attack. She has awesome party buffs and can put out a ton of AoE damage. The final form of the Aegis, again another spoiler, warning, is Numa. Numa is the strongest tank in the game and can hit with any element type. Really, there's no fault to her other than she only lasts for 60 seconds before reverting back to either Mithra or Pyra. Number 4 is Pandoria. Eye of Shining Justice. I don't need to say anymore. It's the best skill in the game. She was always a decent blade, but with that added in, it launched her into the god tier. The final blade on the god tier is number 3, Elma. Elma is a fast and powerful character with the strongest specials, highest hit counts, and godlike damage. She can be both a tank or a DPS. Her special ability, Overdrive, can buff the party to god tier levels. She is one of the most useful characters in the game. And that's my list. I hope you... The Broken tier. Yes, this game has 2 absolutely broken characters. So broken that they couldn't even be placed among the other characters in the game. With these 2, you can wipe anything that Xenoblade 2 throws at you. With that being said, here they are. First we have number 2, Fiora, the goddess of critical rates. She not only buffs her own critical rate, but can up the critical rate of the entire party. She makes critical healing broken and takes away any use for a healer. Fiora is the best of the best when it comes to support characters. And the final blade is Poppy Cutie Pie. Poppy Cutie Pie can simply do anything you want. I mean anything. There is nothing she can't accomplish. Nothing. She is by far the best and most powerful blade in the game. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was an amalgamation of all the prior games, taking features of every title and combining them into the most polished Xeno game to date. One of the key features of this title was mixing the class-based system of Xenoblade Chronicles X and the gacha hero system of Xenoblade 2, creating what essentially becomes a job system. The 6 main characters of Xenoblade Chronicles 3 can learn up to 25 jobs, each coming with arts, skills, master arts, and individual stats. Now, the Xeno games have never been accused of being simple. These games are a data miner's dream as new game-breaking strats are constantly discovered. With that being said, I feel that I have taken in all considerations in building this list. A few key considerations are these. 1. If a class provides skills and abilities that are important for game-breaking team builds but isn't useful by itself, it will still land high on this list. 2. The debuffing mechanic is possibly one of the worst gimmicks in the game, and any class built around it will land low on this list. 3. I'm considering an entire playthrough with an emphasis on endgame. Post-game will be considered, but it won't be as heavy as the endgame. Finally, team synergy plays a huge role into list placement, though I won't be calling out the exact synergies that make jobs game-breaking, but the more dependent class is on other classes, the lower it will appear on this list. And don't forget to stick around till the end for a bonus list. We'll start with the tier. The worst class in the game is the attacker class, the Stalker. The Stalker dishes out some of the worst damage. The art synergy is terrible and works against each other. On top of all this, the Stalker is highly debuff dependent, making it one of the worst choices for your team. Next is Tyon's starting class, the Tactician. Again, this healer support class is highly dependent on debuffs, making it a terrible choice, even in the early game. The final member of the tier is the Machine Assassin. Similar to the Stalker, the Machine Assassin is built completely around debuffing enemies. Though, of the 3 classes we talked about so far, the Machine Assassin does it the best, making it the top of the tier. The low tier. Guardian Commander is the single worst tank in the game, but a decent support unit. It has a depressingly low crit rate, and in order to keep aggro, it needs to be player controlled. The main gimmick of this class is its awakening skill. If used right, it can be useful, but if put in as the main tank, you'll find the Guardian Commander has a tough time carrying the team. Next on the low tier is another tank, the Heavy Guard. This is LAN's starting class and has some of the worst AI in the game. If controlled, the early access to topple is nice, and can carry you through until you unlock better tanks. The final member of the low tier is the Thaumaturge. The Thaumaturge is a terrible healer DPS hybrid unit that just so happens to come with the single best skill in the game, Ultimate Qigong. Ultimate Qigong ignores 40% of enemy defense and is flatly applied to any physical class. This skill alone makes physical classes overall better than ether-based classes. Alright, as is the case with many large lists, we're going to break up the mid tier into two tiers, so let's begin with the lower mid tier. First up is the Martial Artist. This DPS has a high and fairly easily attainable damage multiplier. Hitting the multiplier cap early is the main feature of the Martial Artist, but it also comes with its own issues as not pulling aggro is very difficult. That being said, Reagan Force is incredibly strong, making the Martial Artist your average DPS. And speaking of average DPS, the Full Metal Jaguar is one of the best early and mid-game ether-based attackers, up until you hit the late game. The Full Metal Jaguar almost beats everyone else in damage. Once enemies are able to dodge even a single attack though, this class drops in relevance big time as damage is based on accuracy. The Lost Vanguard is the opposite of the Full Metal Jaguar, picking up speed towards the end of the game but struggling in the mid game. The Lost Vanguard is really only able to keep aggro via its smash skill, though being an Agnes class, it has access to the best tank arts, so that can be corrected. As you reach endgame enemies, evasion tanks take a hit, and blocking tanks like the Lost Vanguard pick up speed, making it a mid-tier tank. The final member of the lower mid-tier is the Yumsmith. The Yumsmith is an interesting class, which excels at building the chain attack meter. On top of this, the Yumsmith provides one of the second best breaking arts in the game, which is pivotal for the best breakers in the game. The problem with this class is its low DPS and its slight dependence on debuffing enemies. In the post-game, the Yumsmith can be built to rival breakers like the Nopon Champion and Ogre classes. The upper mid-tier. The Strategos is a high damaging healer which benefits from the skills of the Signifer. It can give counter heal and even buff attacks, making it a highly effective support, DPS, and healer hybrid. The Noponic Champion is, well, it's a class that exists. Its build is terrible as its skills and abilities conflict with each other, and its gimmick applies only to the user of the class and cannot be carried party-wide. Now, Noponic Champion does have the single best break art in the game, and with the right build can rival a class like the Ogre, so it ended up here on the mid tier. The Medic Gunner is Uni's starting class. It has a great attack buff and above average healing abilities. Mixed with the Signifer and Incursor's arts and skills, this class can become top tier, but mainly towards the endgame and postgame. Overall, you can't go wrong with Medic Gunner. Next is the Life Sage. The Life Sage is a post-game only healing class, so it's very limited in use. On top of this, Signifer, Troubadour, and Lapidaris would beat it out even if you could use it in the main storyline. The War Medic is one of the best straight-up healers in the game. Taking advantage of Signifer's arts, the War Medic becomes an optimal buffer as well. Oh, and don't forget its debuff immunity. Aside from the obvious game-breaking classes, the War Medic will be a mainstay in your party for the majority of your playthrough. The Zephyr is the best tank in the game. Sure, you can make an argument that the Super Boss's accuracy makes it less than ideal tank, but the majority of the early, mid, late, and post-game, you're going to be hard-pressed to find anything that can beat it. Now, the major caveat here is that to truly get your money's worth out of the Zephyr, it needs to be the class of the controlled player. But its AI is still passable, so it's landed here on the upper mid-tier. The final member of the upper mid-tier is the Flash Fencer. Flash Fencer isn't a class you'll be using after the mid-game, but there isn't a single team strategy that won't use its absolutely broken art set. Cross Impact alone is used in combinations with the Signifer to make the most busted setup possible. Because of this, the Flash Fencer makes it to the top of the mid tier. The top tier. The Royal Summoner is another post-game exclusive DPS class. The Royal Summoner has the best damage multiplier in the game and an incredible master art. On the downside, it's ether-based and is pretty squishy if it takes aggro, but it's still effective enough that it belongs on the top tier. The Seraph is an incredibly risky glass cannon, but if capable of living, the Seraph's damage is mind-boggling at times. In fact, it can dish out the most damage in the game with the right equipment and skills. Now that damage is situational, which makes it less effective than the Swordfighter or Incursor, but with a topple art and chain attack potential, this class ends up as one of the best DPS classes in the game. The Lapidaris is the ultimate healer, and if built right, can keep pace with the Signifer and Troubadour. If given a 100% crit rate and spamming Blessed Edge, your party will be unkillable. Even if you don't use this class, the skills it provides for the party, like Beaming Edge, which is a party-wide crit buff, is highly worth it. The final member of the top tier is Noah's starting class, the Swordfighter. The Swordfighter is incredibly versatile and works well against super bosses. On top of that, its ability to avoid aggro is unparalleled. Air Slash is the highest damaging art in Xenoblade 3, and with the Smash art and Lucky 7 spamming, the Swordfighter is absolutely top tier. It does require the support of other classes and is heavily dependent on that support in the endgame, but even so, it's a beast of a DPS. Alright, let's finish this list up with the God tier. The Incursor dishes out the most consistent and highest damage of any DPS class in Xenoblade 3. With critical damage being its main gimmick, insanely fast cooldown times, increased launch damage potential, and the lack of dependence on support from other classes, the Incursor is straight up one of the best classes in the game, period. The Troubadour is the single best healer in Xenoblade 3, and paired with the Signifer actually breaks the game. The main reason for this is Troubadour's ability to freeze buffs, making the Signifer's non-stop onslaught of buffs infinite. On top of this, the Troubadour makes art spamming a breeze. Even if you don't use the Troubadour, you absolutely will use its arts and master art. The Ogre is the breaking god of Xenoblade 3. You can make the argument that the Nopon Champion and Yumsmith can be made to be just as effective, but ultimately, common consensus is that the Ogre class breaks the game as a high damage physical class able to break even the toughest super bosses. The second best class in Xenoblade 3 is the Signifer. The Signifer is the single most broken support role in the game, with the ability to stack on dozens of buffs, then share them among the entire party. The main strategy that makes the Signifer a complete beast is the combination of Cross Impact and Resonant Flag, which gives all party members power charge. Spamming this in battle and during chain attacks will ensure immense damage. The only downside of this class is its slow battle animations, but that's still not enough to knock this class down. The final class on this list, and top of the God tier, is Soul Hacker. Soul Hacker is the blue mage of the game and has the ability to learn enemy skills. These enemy skills vary in usefulness, with skills like Dragon Decree and Toxic Gas giving constant power charge, Wild Wave and Elimination Beam boosting damage, and passives to increase your crit damage. You have the best DPS in the game. Attack, defense, and healing mastery are skills that improve as you get more soul hacking skills. Once maxed out, there is nothing the Soul Hacker can't do better than everyone else. And that's my list. If you haven't picked up Xenoblade 3 yet, I highly recommend it. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and don't forget to become a Patreon member for more perks. Bonus round. Top 10 coolest heroes, go! Number 10, Sagiri. Number 9, Kamaravi. Number 8, Alexandria. Number 7, Monica. Number 6, Commander Ashira. Number 5, Gray. Number 4, Masha. Number 3, Triton. Number 2, Ethel. And number 1's a spoiler, so stop the video now. It's Rex and Shulk, of course.